In a single 48-hour window in June 2026, 12 industrial workers died across 2 distant sites in India. In Surat, 4 men, including a facility supervisor, asphyxiated after entering a jewelry unit's septic tank to clean it. Nearly 1,000 miles away, at the Visakhapatnam steel plant, an estimated 150 tons of highly pressurized molten steel exploded, claiming up to 9 lives. The standard administrative and media response to events like these is predictable. They are routinely categorized as tragic anomalies or random technical glitches. But examining the operational context reveals a different reality. These are highly predictable, foreseeable failures of basic organizational safety. To analyze these events structurally, especially for the GS2 and GS3 exams, we have to look at labor informalization, organizational negligence, and the gaps in current safety legislation. True industrial analysis requires us to treat these fatalities as symptoms of a deliberate governance model that prioritizes cost over safety. This image captures the baseline hazard of a confined space. Notice the unprotected worker deep in the open pit. In industrial vats and septic tanks, like in Surat, the primary danger is unseen: the rapid accumulation of toxic gas with zero natural ventilation. When a worker collapses in this environment, it triggers a universally documented sequence. A second unprotected worker rushes in, immediately succumbing to the exact same fumes. The initial casualty is compounded by frantic, unprotected rescue attempts. Compare that to the globally established standard for confined space entry. Here, the worker is equipped with a protective suit, a helmet, and an independent breathing apparatus, protocols that industry has known about for decades. In the tragic Surat case, none of this required safety gear was deployed. There was no mechanical ventilation, no safety harnesses, no retrieval lines, and no standby rescue team. This modern industrial failure connects directly to the historical context of manual scavenging. The physical exposure to hazardous waste continues to fall disproportionately on specific socioeconomic and caste groups. The Surat fatalities represent a conscious administrative failure to enforce known protocols. Labeling this an accident obscures the reality of organizational negligence. Scaling up from a local jewelry unit brings us to the extreme physical volatility of the Visakhapatnam steel plant. Workers here manage heavy industrial infrastructure in close proximity to molten steel, reaching temperatures of 1,600 degrees Celsius. In high-risk process industries, severe events rarely start as massive explosions. They begin as cascading failures, where a single unmitigated variable in a pressurized system triggers exponential damage. Prior to the blast at Renel, trade unions flagged specific warning signs. They pointed directly to aging equipment and heavily deferred maintenance schedules. The failure chain is compounded by the human operational element. Reduced staffing levels and excessive workloads mean fewer operators monitor highly volatile systems. These management choices do not happen in a vacuum. They correlate directly with broader financial stress and divestment pressures facing public sector units. Whether it is a local Surat tank or a massive state steel plant, the root cause is identical. Organizations deliberately chose to defer safety costs. A central commonality connects modern industrial hazards across every sector. The mortality rate falls disproportionately on contract labor rather than permanent employees. This is driven by the accountability gap. When a facility owner outsources operations, legal and financial liability splits between the principal employer, who owns the site, and the contractor, who supplies the worker. Within this fragmented structure, comprehensive safety induction and rigorous training disappear. Neither the facility owner nor the contractor claims direct responsibility for ensuring the workers' operational literacy. This leaves contract workers intensely vulnerable to management pressure. They lack the job security required to refuse dangerous tasks or demand protective gear, knowing either action risks immediate termination. The sharp rise in contract labor tracks closely with India's broader macroeconomic drive for workforce flexibility and operational cost reduction. Relying on temporary labor without extending permanent safety umbrellas guarantees higher mortality rates. Economic informalization directly translates into a physical hazard. To address these systemic flaws, India introduced the Occupational Safety, Health, and Working Conditions Code of 2020. The code was meant to consolidate industrial safety laws. It finally went into active enforcement on November 21, 2025. Both the Surat and Vizag tragedies occurred during its crucial early enforcement window. On paper, the code offers robust structural improvements. It mandates strict risk assessments, requires compulsory safety officers in larger establishments, and creates a unified registration system for employers. However, early implementation exposed a severe gap. A unified legal text cannot independently fix an underfunded labor inspection machinery or overcome deeply entrenched local apathy. Laws written on paper remain inert when the state's enforcement mechanisms are overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the informal sector. Moving forward, the first required policy shift is mandatory zero-tolerance enforcement of confined space protocols, backed heavily by the strict penal provisions already present in the 2013 Manual Scavengers Act. Second, contract workers must be statutorily integrated into the principal employer's internal safety, training, and accountability audits, effectively closing the liability loophole. Third, high-risk process industries like steelmaking require mandatory, transparent third-party audits and legally non-deferrable maintenance schedules. Industrial safety is a core macroeconomic imperative. Sustainable Development Goal 8 formalizes this connection, recognizing that decent work is the necessary foundation for sustained economic growth. To stop industrial fatalities, organizational safety must transition from being treated as a negotiable cost center to an absolute operational baseline. As you structure your GS3 analysis, consider this question: which barrier is actually harder to legislate away? The structural accountability gap of contract labor, or the deeply ingrained cost over safety mindset of modern industry?